Okay, so today we're going to be replacing the fenders on this trailer. This is a 5-ton trailer, and we don't really use it in the winter too much, but somehow it's still rusted out pretty good. It's been like this for a little while, just really haven't used it a lot. So we're going to pull this in, take these fenders off, or what's left of them, and then replace them. So we got to cut down these fenders. Got to cut off these welds here. Take these off. Here's the new fender. So the way they manufacture this fender, they make it a little bit long so you can cut it off to whatever custom length you need. You can see right now that that's way too tall on there. So I made a mark over here, and I'm going to cut it down about 6 inches so it'll fit. So this is a cold saw. When you're cutting, it doesn't even get hot. These fenders we got at Tractor Supply, and there's two different edges on it. The flat edge goes on the inside, and the rounded edge goes on the outside. Looks good. So you can see that this fits a lot better now. This is pretty much what it was before. So we got 6.5 to the top, 6.5 to the top. So before we put this on, we're going to add some reinforcement on here. We want to make it so that we can stand on this without it flexing too much. So we're going to put a piece of small angle iron. Just going to make it about 44 inches long. We're going to weld it to the bottom side of this before we put it on. And then we're also going to add another diagonal piece going down to the bottom. So we made a notch right here. Now we can bend this. So we're going to be using a 220 MIG welder. This is a Forney. Works really great for stuff like this. So really you just want to put a couple tack welds in pretty far apart so that the metal doesn't warp. This is really thin metal. It's really not necessary to run a big long weld bead on this. It just doesn't need that much strength. Any force that's going to be on this is going to be in a downward position, and there's going to be a support in the middle. It really just doesn't need to have a lot of weld on it. You can see where the spots came through. That's how much heat is in this. That's why you don't want to do a big long bead. It just distorts the metal and it makes it much weaker. I think we almost need to bend this down so that that side can get closer. So I'm just going to nick this little corner off so we can get this as flat as possible. That way you're not filling in too much weld. So this is going to be the same thing. We're going to put a couple tack welds in it, make sure everything fits right. See, now there's 3 points of contact, so this thing is really solid right now. I'm shaking the whole trailer right now. So to get this curved right here, it's kind of easy on this actually. All you have to do is mark the back side. And then when we put it in, we'll shift it just a little bit that way. So we'll do the same thing here, mark the back side of it. So if this metal was a little thicker, then the ideal tool to use would be a plasma cutter. But for this is only 16 gauge metal. So we're just going to use a jigsaw with a metal blade. So what I like to do when I'm welding, I'll weld an inch or two at a time, and then let it cool for a little bit and come back, do a little bit more. If you weld too much at once, it'll just distort the metal. For strength purposes, it's really not necessary to make a whole bead here and a whole bead here, but in order for water not to just get in there and just sort of rust everything out, I'm just gonna weld that all into one big bead. Then that way there's less chance of water just sort of getting in between the metal and sitting.
So we got these pieces of metal at a box store just because it was convenient. It really wasn't necessary to go all the way to the metal shop just to get that. So we're going to deal with it, and we're going to make sure this is square so when you put the next piece on, there's not a gap on one side or the other, on the top or the bottom. So that side needs to go up, and this needs to go down actually.
Yeah, but am I going too far over here?
Yeah, go down with that. A little bit more. And go down with this side. Yeah, that's perfect right there. So I'm going to mark this so that we know exactly where it goes back to. So we're going to do the same thing here. Just square it up, make sure that this is square, and everything's covering, so we're going to mark it. Mark where it is on here, and that way you can measure the distance between this mark, and that's our piece to go in the middle. So now I'm just going to measure between here. I'm going to burn 1 inch on it. So that's 14 and 11/16. So it's really 13 and 11/16. You always want to burn 1 inch so that you know exactly where you're at. Because otherwise, if you try to put the end on there, it's never really exact. Same rules apply for carpentry too. So we just got really lucky. This happened to be exactly how long it needed to be. I mean, right down to the 32nd. So I'm just going to use this piece of wood right here for a straight edge to make sure that these are flat all the way across the bottom. I'm going to hold it in place. And just tack weld it. So you can see the manufacturing process for this metal isn't very precise. These pieces are supposed to both be 6 inches, but you can see there's a 1/4 inch difference between them. So sometimes you can use a regular grinding wheel. This is a flap disc wheel. It just works a little bit better to get things a little bit cleaner. So this is that support piece that I was talking about, mid-span on this. So what we did is we welded these two pieces of angle iron together. That way you're not relying on the strength of the actual sheet metal to weld to. So now that these are welded together, this is going to be really strong.